So today is a victory for hardworking Americans. This ruling is a victory for America.
And Republicans. We know what you're thinking. Yes, publicly, the Supreme Court's rulings this week on the Affordable Care Act and gay marriage were a loss for the GOP, but privately, we've got to think there are more than a few Republicans relieved at the news. Imagine the political fallout had the Supreme Court ruled against the administration and effectively gutted the Affordable Care Act. Millions of Americans across 34 states, most of them red states, would have lost their insurance subsidies. It would have been a mess, one the Republican-controlled Congress would have likely had to clean up, and while Republicans had been floating a few contingency plans for that scenario, they weren't able to coalesce around just one. In a sense, this way Republicans get the best of both worlds. They can continue to rail against the law without actually dealing with it. And if the Republican outrage on Twitter was any indication, that's what they'll do. As for the court's decision on gay marriage, that also seemed to give some Republicans an out.
And as I have said repeatedly as they were considering this, we'll honor what the Supreme Court does. It's the law of the land.
While gay marriage might have been an effective wedge issue in 2012, opposing it today has gotten a lot trickier. Not only do a majority of Americans now favor same-sex marriage, but a majority of young Republicans do too. As the Washington Post's Chris Cillizza writes, among Republicans this election season, the less said about gay marriage, the better. To be sure, plenty of social conservatives slammed the court's ruling Friday, but others indicated they're ready to move on. Lindsey Graham vowed not to pursue, quote, a divisive effort that would be doomed to fail. And from Jeb Bush, good people who have opposing views should be able to live side by side. For Newsy, I'm Elizabeth Hagedorn.